Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of On Tilt. Julius here with Miss Dannielle, aka Mama Brown. How are you?
I am good, Julius. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good. Got any plans coming up for the weekend?
You know what? Coming off a Labor Day weekend, that was like the get out of town, get some rest and relaxation in. Went up to Lake Erie, hung out there for one of the days. Then went up to Moraine State Park, about an hour north. So I was like outdoors in nature, just relaxing for the whole weekend. So this weekend will probably be more like at home.
Okay.
Catching up on some chores and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
I was in Pittsburgh this past weekend. I went to my friend and I. We went to the football games. We went to we went to the was the Soul Food Festival.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff happening this past week.
Yes, and then they had the Rib Festival, and we don't eat ribs or meat. Beef, pork or anything like that, but it was fun. They had other things, that was fun, but it was a beautiful weekend in Pittsburgh. I mean, the weather was superb, and just catching up, running into people. Of course, I went foundation house hunting, and that's coming along. So it was just a very nice getaway this past weekend. Had a lot of fun, a lot of laughter, a lot of smiles. This weekend, I'm doing the same thing you're doing. I have some chores to take care of here at my home in DC, and just being a homebody this weekend. I met with my girlfriends yesterday and had crabs. It was gorgeous. We went on the water. So yeah, it's time to bring it back in. Bring it back in. But so we got a very serious topic. This is Suicide Awareness Month. And it's very close to home for both of us. So I guess before we get started, we need to do our moment of silence.
Thank y'all for joining us in that. So, as Mama Brown started to say, September, for those of us who weren't with us last week, September is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. So this is a topic that is impacting so many people, especially we talked about in pre-show with COVID and all the uncertainty still around that. And today's show, we want to continue that conversation and focus on some areas that suicide is the narrative is changing, the numbers, the impact, the communities of people that it is affecting. It is starting to become concerning and become something that we really need to talk about. So our first area of focus we really want to talk about is the suicide rates among Black youth here, specifically in the U.S. So suicide rates among Black youth, they are increasing drastically. When we talk about our young Black boys and our young Black girls, we see that young Black boys that are impacted by the criminal and legal justice system, their suicide rates are increasing, and young Black girls who are getting out of relationships or having relationship challenges at that teenage age in those teenage years, they're also seeing a spike in their suicide rates and suicide attempts. So we talk a lot about how in the Black community, mental health is something that we don't talk about. Suicide in that conversation is also something we talked about in pre-show that we just kind of sweep it under the rug. We're like, that's not a real thing for us, right? We're spiritual beings. We're connected to our religion. We pray. We're connected to a greater source. So we're going to rise above this.
We're taught to survive. To survive. We can't crack or break. We have to survive.
Yes. Yes. So what comes up for you, Mama Brown, when you think about young Black boys and young Black girls, in this increase in the suicide rate?
I mean, I think about peer pressure. We all been victims of peer pressure, and man, it can be tough in the Black community with peer pressure. I mean, I'm not white. I don't know what it's like to be in a white community, but we're growing up during a time, well, let me just say this. When I was young, we didn't have the internet. So that we had bullying, but it was isolated to school or the neighborhood, but now we have potential bullying that not only can affect you within your community and then within your school, but it can follow you through social media. And I don't understand that level of pressure, but I just think at this particular time it's so many things our young people are faced with that I don't know how myself would have been able to survive it. Like, I mean, I'm already looking back at my childhood and remembering it was a struggle, what I'm saying, trying to keep up with the latest clothing and shoes and, but now, oh my gosh, it's so much more. It's how many likes you get on social media, and if you got caught out there with a camera in your face and someone, caught you doing something and they blasted your business, and you can't hide from it. You can't go home. You can't close the door. You can't go to a new school. You simply can't hide from it. So I feel I have such a, oh my gosh, empathy for our young people trying to deal with today's peer pressure that looks a lot different than possibly you and I when we were young.
Yeah, and you make me think of something, Mama Brown. We need to, I'm not saying that we don't do this, and I don't want to make this blanket generalization in the Black community, but I've been in conversations and I've overheard people saying to youth or about Black youth, that's not a big deal. Like there's much bigger things to worry about than breaking up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or worrying about what they're going to say about your clothes, or if you're going to be participating in the sporting team or something like that, right? Things that these like rite of passage moments that are like everything to our youth, right? So you got those kind of things coupled in with COVID, the lack of socialization, and our youth, they haven't even really fully had an opportunity to tell us like what they feel about the impacts of COVID. They're just kind of like, all right, we're going along, we're doing what we need to do. We want to be around our friends. So like all that stuff factored in, like I could see why it could be difficult to navigate and maintain your sanity with all of that that's going on as a young person, as specifically as a young Black person. Now, one thing I want to pull out too from this article is from the Columbus Dispatch, and it says that Black children ages 5 to 12 are twice as likely to die by suicide as their white counterparts. And it goes on to say Black girls were more likely to experience a crisis with a boyfriend or girlfriend prior to death and die by suicide within 24 hours of an argument.
Wow.
Within 24 hours of an argument. And Black boys were more likely to have experienced a recent legal problem, and when compared with Black girls, were less likely to have received prior mental health treatment. So for young Black girls, according to this article, is a lot of it is connected to relationship.
Yes.
endings and struggles. And then for Black boys, it's the legal system, and Black boys aren't getting mental health support as much as young Black girls.
Yeah, Julius, you said two things that stood out to me. Um, you mentioned that, we kind of tell our youth to kind of, make the adjustment. It's life, and the, you know, are we listening to them, or are we kind of saying to them, we're sweeping it under the rug and we're saying, get over it? That's the worst thing you could tell someone in a crisis, is to get over it. And just hearing you talk made me think about, in our community, it's almost like suicide used to be a taboo because we were taught. I know I grew up in the church, so I was taught if you even thought about suicide, you're not going to heaven. The most scariest thing is thinking that you're not going to be able to go to heaven. So again, am I really being listened to? Or, again, am I emotions being suppressed and ignored? And another thing you said was about, I'm thinking about isolation. When you talked about COVID and we're in, and being able to connect with others, that whole year of being in the house and the school shut down, how much of a toll of isolation played into this, because it almost forced you to socialize through social media. So yeah, wow, I can see the numbers increasing, not only because of the legal system and not only because of breakups and other things like that, but again, not being heard, isolated, all of these combinations, points to yet another, mental health issue that we need to look at among our community. And what, again, better month than September, even though in our community we say, regardless of look, the things are so serious in our community, it doesn't matter if it's September. Suicide Awareness Month for us is 12 months, 365 days a year, just like Black History, just like a lot of the other things, mental health, which is next month. It's a lot. Any month that we talk about, trust, it's 12 months, 365 days. But because it's September, we do want to bring awareness to this very necessary discussion. It's time for us to stop hiding, or stop thinking it's a taboo, suicide, or hush hush, or being ashamed because we know somebody in our family that decided that this life was just too harsh, to live. It is possible. Trust me, Julius, and I don't want to be too, but it is possible to be in this life and be overwhelmed. It is possible to exist in this life and want to take your life. It is possible to believe that sometimes you can't exist without those that were with you, for such a period and have impacted your life, like the birth for me of a child and then having a child leave before me. It is possible to be that overwhelmed to say, I don't feel like existing on this realm of life. It's possible. Very real.
Yes. And Mama Brown, I start to think about, you mentioned this, I don't know if you talked about it as a belief or something that was in your mind about the religious and spiritual, like, consequences or implications of even thinking about suicide, let alone having an attempt and dying by suicide. And I'm thinking about, our churches. Let's start there. Mm-hmm. The For me, as a mental health advocate, specifically as a Black mental health advocate, I believe that the churches have a responsibility to incorporate mental health into the congregation somehow. I've been a part of certain churches, like as an adult, doing my mental health work, and they've said, "Hey, we want to get our congregation trained in mental health first aid. We want to have these conversations about mental health and wellness because so we could open up that conversation and explore the intersection of my religious and spiritual beliefs with mental health and wellness and biological things and chemical imbalances." So how it doesn't necessarily have to be a either or. You believe in God and that's it, or you believe in science and medicine and that's it. It's like, for me, I'm like, how can I pray and have my relationship with God and then still have a conversation with my therapist and get some insight and feedback? Because I might pray to God for healing and God sends me a therapist and I'm like, no, that's not the kind of healing I want. I want to heal a different way. But God is like, I'm trying to send you some healing through this therapist, but I might be so locked in on my religious perspective, I think, as you said, that I'm not even able to see healing in other areas. And that's not I want to be clear and say that I believe in God. I believe in the power of healing. I also know the power of therapy and getting some stuff out that way too, in addition to prayer and my spiritual connections.
Well, let's just be real. The church is behind. They're playing catch up right now. Because I believe they are part of the latter end of getting on board when it comes to mental health and suicide. I very rarely hear them preach on suicide in the church. And I listen to sermons all the time. Sometimes that's my nourishment to make it through a day. But I was thinking about that, and we're not turning this to a religious segment, but I was really thinking about how many sermons have I ever heard where the preacher is talking about suicide, and it's not so much in a negative context. We're not talking about Judas when he took his life. You know what I'm saying? Because he betrayed Jesus and he couldn't deal with it. I think it was Judas, if I remember. Don't quote me.
You better go pull out your Bible and brush up.
Hey, I will afterwards. Hey, look, in the comment section, look, I don't mind being wrong now.
John says, yes, it was.
It was. Hey, my Bible teacher would be really happy. But but other than that, that's the only time I believe clergy really address it. Look, I'm talking from Mama Brown perspective. Suicide. So again, it goes back to even in the religious community where a lot of us depend on our mental health treatment and therapy before we're starting to learn it's okay to go to professional trained mental health specialists without it conflicting with being considered weak or going against God or not, our religious confliction between mental health and our religion. But I really want the church to step up. I think that they can. I think that they still lag behind getting the message out there. Kudos to the churches that says, look, train our people that work with us, to help us help our congregation. That is phenomenal. I don't see it being done enough. I think it needs to be done. I think they might sometimes have a small section where they have like a little counseling group, the sick and shut in, marriage counseling. But what about those who say every day is a challenge just for me to live?
Yeah.
Robert Williams was very vocal about his depression, and he still took his life. This is very real. And I just think churches and the religious community can do more, because they are in a position to do more. They have so much influence in this subject area. They should be doing more.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll leave that call to action right there, and that's a good segue into another area in terms of where folks are experiencing this a lot. We talked pre-show about law enforcement and suicide, and how suicide rates amongst people in law enforcement are increasing, have been high for a significant amount of time. And this was one of those things where I started to think about it, and it gave me some mixed emotions, because it's like, I'm not going to say all of my experiences with law enforcement have been negative, but when I think of law enforcement, I get it's a certain thing it does to me. Mm-hmm. So to think about suicide and mental health within law enforcement, it's like, how do I, as a Black man, reconcile my own negative feelings and emotions about my law enforcement experiences with certain people within law enforcement, and then what's seen in the media, right, about how police officers have been historically engaging with Black folks. So I'm like, but then I still feel the empathy, though. I'm like, but that doesn't mean that I want somebody to die, either to die by suicide and to hurt and to feel that pain of that. But it's an issue within the law enforcement, ranks, if you will, because of the weight of what they see, what they experience, the expectations that come along with, don't say this, say that. I mean, that could, I can only imagine how difficult that has to be to carry that every day of your life as a police officer or whatever level of law enforcement you're in. Like, that's got to be heavy. Mm-hmm. You talk a lot about your experience, in the law enforcement space. So I know you have a unique perspective on this subject.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to training, and the thing is that in the law enforcement community, another side of it is a lot of them suffer from mental health, like you said, too, issues. So, and it's so easy in the law enforcement community to project yourself on your what do you call them? Citizens, to project yourself on the citizens. And so, that part right there is a whole nother a discussion, because it happens all the time. We know that a lot of angry law enforcement officers, take their anger out at home on their spouses, the same as they would on the citizens in the streets. So, and then we also know a lot of them have committed suicides as well. But we don't talk about that. It's so much layers to suicide that we don't talk about, that we just need to delayer and start talking like we're doing on this show. We just need to start talking about it, because, I too, I was watching this morning. I forgot what state it was. It was a woman with Alzheimer's. She went into the Walmart, came out with $14 worth of items that she didn't pay for, but she has Alzheimer's. The law enforcement treated her horrible, broke her arm. She was hospitalized, so, and they settled this, with the family. But again, how come they could not understand that she did not know who she was? Like, where was the questioning? Where was the, what's going on? So again, there's a breakdown of communication, which again leads to a lot of suicide attempts and a lot of suicide actual execution, where they actually executed or what's the word I'm looking for? Attempted and actually
Died by
died.
suicide.
Yes, a better word. Look, I don't know why I can't use the word. Actually died from suicide. A lot of it is communication, because I think a lot of these people have reached out, Julius. Not everyone just, write letters, and you don't have a history to see that they have at some point tried to reach out for help or tried to communicate that they were in trouble. And we kind of, again, passively swept it under the rug. Oh, you'll be okay. And sometimes when you tell somebody you dismiss them, all you got to do is dismiss them one time. Good luck thinking you're going to win their confidence and they're going to come back to you and think they're going to confide in you when they at that breaking point.
Right. What? Now this is making me think. I'm gonna try to connect some dots here. Now we know we all have a past in a history of some things that we've done that we're not necessarily proud of, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm giving my little disclaimer here. I too am one of those people, right? I have a history that if I told you, you'd be like, nah, that wasn't you, Julius. There's no way you in a past life did that, right? So the pathway I'm going down is that there are certain things that I am taking to my grave with me, that if you put me in a room with the most skilled mental health professional, I'm not telling them. I'm a allude to what it is or what it was, but I'm like, I know you have there's client patient provider client privilege. Like I know that these things are supposed to be kept confidential, but also in the back of my mind, I'm like, what if what I say in this session somehow gets out in the public? And I'm just thinking of if I'm a police officer and I'm carrying the weight of I purposely shot this person, or I purposely did this thing that was against protocol, and it's like weighing me down, right? I know I purposely did it, but I'm not confessing it in the public because I'm not about to lose my job or defame the FOP or this particular department or unit. So I'm not saying nothing in that space, and I'm probably not even telling I'm not telling my command. I'm not telling anybody.
No one.
I'm not telling my partner. Nobody knows this except for me. And then they're like, all right, we're gonna get you in to see the department psychiatrist. Is the best one in the business, and you can process what you need to. I'm not even telling them.
No.
So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that what do you do when you feel like you can't tell nobody your stuff? Like, so do we feel sorry for folks in law enforcement when that happens? Or is it because I know there's some people who don't. They're like, no, you murdered someone. Now I'm not going to feel bad for you because you're dealing with the mental and emotional and spiritual anguish of that. There's some people who are like, no, you murdered someone. Your humanity is gone in my eyes. So that.
Well, I think when we're talking about that level of non-disclosure, it will innately internally kill you. I have some things that I will take to my grave, but I promise you, I thank goodness I have a spiritual, foundation, because I know there's one person I can confess to, and they will not tell.
Amen.
Believe it or not, that does alleviate that. I'm non-denominational. I believe that I believe in spirituality, and people have a right to believe, to pray, and to believe in whoever God they want to believe in. As for me and my God, it gives me an outlet that when I feel like I can't tell anybody, I can always in my prayer life tell him and get up from that and saying, I have released it out of my spirit and put it in the safe hands of someone I know I can trust with this information. And to your point, how many times have we seen what is it called? The tell all books that comes out after someone has left, and you're like, what? The problem with the tell all books after, people think they're doing them a service by keeping their secret while they're alive. You forget about their children, you forget about their family members, and people are still here that have to live with you thinking it's safe enough to tell that person's, truth or that secret. It still has the potential to harm. So and that's another thing we're up against. It was a tell-all book that just came out that had all the celebrities in there, all of them. Well, these celebrities have children, and so what happens is the bullying because of that. Because we're in the Black community, we like to be entertained. So we follow entertainers, and we like to be entertained. So things stick with us. And so, to your point, with law enforcement, hey, look, people, period, you got to be able to release yourself of that, because if you don't, it will kill you. Stress kills. It kills. So if you're not gonna die from suicide, you might be still suicidal by carrying on that burden that's going to kill you. Self-induced burden. And if you're wrong and you're ethically wrong and you did something that has taken another person's life, okay, here we go. Lord, forgive me. May it rot in you until you're at a point where because there's a family hurting by not knowing the answers. You got the answers. You were wrong, but yet you're selfish because you're saying, I don't want to face the consequences of my actions. So, to me, may that secret rot in you until you are courageous enough, unselfish enough to bring about the truth that can heal a family and hold your own self accountable. And if that includes doing time, then you must do the time. Other than that, I'm not perfect. Forgive me. Told y'all I'm not perfect. May you rot with that until it forces you to come to light. And I think everybody who know Mama Brown, her story, know where this passion is coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yes. When you were talking early on in your point, Mama Brown, about you being able to confess all to the God that you believe in, I think we also need to talk about that as well, and stretch that out for people, because there is power in prayer. There is healing, therapeutic, and wellness power in prayer in your relationship with whatever higher power you pray to and have a relationship with. And I just started to think about like the levels of mental health professionals, and I'm thinking of counselors and social workers and licensed clinical social workers and psychiatrists, and I'm like, is God the ultimate mental health professional? Like, it feels like to me, even earlier I said, I believe in the power of therapy and having a spiritual connection too. There's something, I don't want to say indescribable, but there's something magical and special about being able to take something to God for me as a believer and get healing in that conversation and from that relationship. It doesn't mean I'm not getting healing elsewhere, but it's a different kind of healing. Like it's a different energy and type of healing. I don't need a prescription for it, or I don't need a diagnosis for it. And it's, it could be in the good times and the joyful times, or in those rock bottom moments of being like, man, like I might not really want to be here. And then, you just, if there's, you may have exhausted all the options. I may have gone to therapy, talked to my support circle, done the support group. I may have done all that, and there's still a puzzle piece missing, internally. So I'm not arguing that prayer fixes all. I'm saying that I know that there have been moments in my life where without faith and without prayer, I wouldn't be alive, because I wouldn't have been able to see beyond the moment, like that moment, in the anguish and the despair in that moment, because it was 3 a.m. and I have no therapist to call, and my wife was asleep, and I'm not texting nobody. So who am I talking to at that hour? I'm talking to God.
Yeah, but people don't understand that, talking to a higher being, it's just what it is. It's just communication. It is. It's just talking. See, we caught up in the rituals of things. You got to pray like this. You got to, and I believe, like the word said, the disciples asked Jesus, teach us how to pray, and yet people every day are in that situation. I don't know how to pray. And I'm saying, because you don't know how to pray, it's because you've been a part of an environment or a system that maybe have made it prayer so, you listen to these elaborate prayers, and so, prayers that are so, and they sometimes might have failed to communicate, to say prayer is just talking to God in your own language, whatever that looks like. Some of us, look, it's been times that let me tell you, it's been times that I talked to God and didn't use the best language. Okay, y'all would have like, you talk to God like that? Well, he is my daddy, ain't he? He
knows what you're thinking anyway.
Yes, he knows what I'm thinking anyway. Might as well just say what I'm thinking. But something else you said earlier, and I don't want to go, but I want to get back to the Black girls real quick. The Black girls, because the numbers with suicide is rising among our black men, our young Black men too. We don't discount them, but there is a shift happening right now with our young Black girls, that the numbers are skyrocketing. What is going on, Julius? And I know you're not a Black girl. I should be, but Julius, in your profession, what is going on is attributing to these numbers of our Black girls. Not only is the numbers rising with suicidal issues, but they're also rising with crime. What is going on? Because we were celebrating a period where they still are, graduating from college much more than our young Black men are, getting better job opportunities. Right now, being the breadwinner in a lot of households, being single parents, but yet professional, still being able to, maintain a household as a single parent, making decent money. So is Is it the pressure that was driving a lot of our young Black men to suicide is now being transferred over those same responsibilities and stressors because we are gaining more responsibilities, more opportunities and all of that? Is what's causing us to now be overwhelmed with life as well? Because these are professional young college student, college age. We're not talking about street girls. We're talking about young, promising women deciding to end their lives.
I think it's layered, and it's a combination of things. And one thing we haven't really teased out here is we can't talk about suicide and not talk about racism. We can't talk about suicide and not talk about poverty. We can't talk about suicide and not talk about gentrification,
Domestic violence too.
domestic violence, and intimate partner violence. So it's not an outlier or something that's on an island, and it's just, oh, young Black girls and young Black boys are dying by suicide just because, right? It's like, okay, a young Black girl may be having some relationship issues, and that is to a 16-year-old, her life is revolving around her partner, right? Her partner in high school. And if that ends, then that feels like it's the end of the world for this young Black girl, on top of her being over sexualized by her peers and adults, on top of her being I don't know what the parentified, right? And maybe having to care for younger siblings, along with her, maybe by herself, right? Along with her being, I don't know what the right word is for this, but adultified, right? It's like, no, that's a 16-year-old girl. Like, she's not, when we hear fast and grown, right? That, like, we gotta. I'm a believer, a firm believer in that we have to stop putting that language and putting those descriptors and labels onto our Black youth, period. Right? But for young Black girls, like, if we are describing a young Black girl as being fast, there's somebody else on the opposite end of that. It could be whoever that person is, trying to, like, compel this young Black girl to participate in whatever it is they're trying to get her to participate in, to that we would call her fast. So we need to start holding the young Black boys accountable for their role in it. These I don't have a word because it's kind of making me angry, but, like, I went to high school with them dudes that was 22, 23, 20. They was in that early 20s age. So it was like they was just removed from high school, but they was still around, like, with the girls, and, like, literally coming back to school, picking them up. And them was usually, like, the D boys. Like, they were like, all right, I'm gonna come roll up, pick my, I'm 25, and I'm coming to scoop my 16-year-old girl up, who the world is projecting her to be grown because she physically looks grown, right? You're equating her physical body appearance with being an adult and having the mindset of an adult. So we can't just put the weight of this onto the young Black boys and the young Black girls, because all these other external things are impacting them. And as a community, like we have a responsibility to think about how all these things are impacting them, our young Black children.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I just, when I think about how all of this is impacting our young Black sisters, you know what word comes to my mind? Rejection. Rejection. On so many levels. The stress of of trying to find your place, trying to, just get ahead, trying to be loved, accepted, because we struggle with that. It's a lot of dysfunction, families in the Black community, because of things like I grew up in the inner city. It was very cool to have your man come pick you up in the latest ride.
Oh, and listen, I would look at him. I was hating. I didn't have no car. I didn't have no gold chains. I have none of it.
I was a part of the fly girl crew. I had him picking me up before I came pregnant with Jamal, my oldest son. He's 28 now, and life got real for me, and no longer did the drug dealers in that life. It be all of a sudden it was like a cloud lifted from me, and I saw how unsafe that environment was, and how I was putting myself and my unborn child at risk. And I had to look at my options, and I had to say, do I choose this life, get on welfare, stay on welfare, and become a part of, the ongoing system of having more children to get that check, or do I get on welfare? Because guess what? Mama Brown was on welfare. Take my butt to school and make that my full-time education. Those were the two choices I had. I decided I don't want a whole lot of these little Jamals and running around here with me with no man, So I was like, that don't look good. So I decided make education my full time. That's the only way I was going to beat the welfare system, because it's very oppressing. They want you to tell them everything. You can only make a certain amount of money, and you have to always be poor. So I said no, but you can still get advantage of the system if you took your butt to school. So I took my butt to school. I went to Howard. I was on welfare darn near the whole time at Howard University. I worked because they couldn't touch my income, because the jobs that I had were back like federal work study jobs. I made sure I signed up for every program that the office came out with, whether it was free daycare, rental assistant, WIC program, to make sure we had healthy foods to eat. I was a part of the whole thing. So again, back to us being young women. Well, I can't talk about the one young women today, but still, the choices are still there. The stressors, even though they're a little bit more magnified and may look differently, it's still there. We have to make choices, in the hard place. But a lot of times, not everyone knows how to access or have the capability of thinking their way or the insight to make the best choices. Sometimes we get so overwhelmed, and I've been on both spectrums. I've been depressed, where I put the covers before I lost Jaylen, where I put the covers over my head, where I felt like I was being rejected by society, let down, not good enough, not pretty enough, not good enough, not, you name them, I felt it before, and it took mentors in my life to help me get unstuck. But no mentors, probably be dead right now. So many levels that life could have took me out had it not been the intervention of others. So I say that to say, as Black women, it's so important for us to intervene for other Black women and girls, because intervention and intervening, and when we see them in a hard place, we should not ignore them or brush it under the rug or reject them, because we should think about, I know for me, I think about when I was there. And I think about the women that came in my life that intervened, maybe through a word, maybe through stopping right there. Everybody who know me know, if you say pray, I'm going to pray right there and then. I don't care if it's 1, 2, 3 words. I'm going to stop and I'm going to pray. We're going to pray right there and then. Whatever it is, we need to show up for these young girls, because suicide is on a rise in this population. And we, the older women, we have a level of accountability to them. So we have to look at ourselves and say, how are we failing them? Because we're in contact with them. They're in our family, they're in our community, they're in our church, they're in our organization, they're on our page. How do we use in our social media to get to them? We have access to them. It really is on us. It really is on us.
Yeah, Mama Brown, you made me think about, I want to give a shout out to, and maybe John could drop this in the chat for us, Gwen's Girls, GWEN, Gwen's Girls here in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. They do some phenomenal work to support young Black girls that are growing into becoming phenomenal Black women and adults. And Gwen's Girls, I know they do some mental health programming that's been phenomenal. I think they do a lot of like multimedia stuff. So they're giving this age range of young Black girls that we're talking about with this increased rate of suicide and mental health challenges, they're giving them a platform to be able to talk about mental health and suicide and healing. And y'all, these if you get a chance, check out Gwen's Girls website, look at some of the mental health work they've been doing. These young Black girls are talking about therapy. They're talking about their therapist. They're talking about, I have a diagnosis, but it doesn't define me. I know how to manage my mental health, and this is how I support my friends and support myself. So at that age, as a teenager, I wasn't talking about mental health. I didn't even know what mental health was until I became an adult. Yeah. So I just wanted to shout out Gwen's Girls, because they, to your point, Mama Brown, they are doing the work. They're engaging with young Black girls here in the worst city for a Black girl and a Black woman. And that's one thing actually I didn't say I want to lift up earlier, is that let's not forget that America is the worst place for a Black girl or Black woman. And, zero in, I'm only going to speak for Pittsburgh, but it's not conducive to healing and support and nurturing for Black girls and Black women. It is in certain circles where it's intentional, but overall, that's not always taken into consideration. How is this space curated in a way that centers the healing of our Black girls and Black women? Like that, to me, should be at the forefront. Yeah, like it shouldn't be an afterthought. So I just wanted to lift that up to say that we all have a responsibility in it, from the congregation, the schools. We know, Mama Brown, I don't know if have you seen the news with the change happening at Pittsburgh public schools? Have you seen or heard about that?
No, I don't know if I have.
The superintendent resigned.
Okay, I have not seen that.
So that's gonna have a, it's gonna have a ripple effect on what it's gonna have a ripple effect in our educational system. So we need to make that space for
And if you can't, tell them to donate. If you can't do anything else, to donate. Money helps these girls be able to be transparent and knock down, ceilings. So donate. Don't think that because you don't have anything, if you got money, you can add to the situation. Julius, before we got like what 8 minutes, can we just touch a little bit on just what was it? Suicide and
the criminalization of suicide internationally.
Yes, like it's not a crime to commit suicide here, but in other countries, if you even try to commit suicide and you don't succeed.
Yeah, it says in this is an article from The Guardian. Suicide still treated as a crime in at least 20 countries.
Do it help prevent suicide?
Punishable by fines of thousands of pounds and up to 3 years in prison. In many nations, children can be prosecuted for attempted suicide, and in Nigeria, children as young as 7 can be arrested, tried, and prosecuted.
Wow!
For a suicide attempt. It says that
mental health.
Your will can even be revoked. So you put something in your will, and if you die by suicide in certain countries, they won't fulfill your will.
So where's mental health in all of this? Because what it says to me is, if I'm going to kill myself, I better be successful at it. Because the other side of it could drive me want to do it again, because there's nothing in place to address the reason why I did this in the first place. You're hurting me beyond the hurt and pain I already feel that makes me want to do it. Like, to me, that makes me want to make sure if I didn't do it successfully, I better make sure I do it successfully the next time. It's I don't understand.
Yeah, there's so many different levels. I immediately think of legislation. That's even here in the U.S. Like, there's certain legislation we need passed to even have, like, certain crisis phone numbers. And y'all see John put some of these numbers in the chat: the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number and the crisis text line is available for folks. There are certain countries that don't have. They couldn't get something like this even approved, right? The governmental people in charge and legislators would not even agree
really on their own
like this, right? So it's like, if there's no legislation to protect my rights when it comes to mental health and wellness, and the I don't even know if this is actual legislation, like, oh, hey, you could you can't get your will, or you could be arrested, or if that's just like the way it is. Like, I don't know if it's like actual law, or if it's just like, this is how we're enforcing it because of like our cultural beliefs. So there is an organization here in Pittsburgh. There's an increasing population, Bhutanese population, and whenever I was having conversations with some of their nonprofit groups and organizations here, it is similar to the Black community in that they're not supposed to be talking about mental health and suicide. They're like, that's not a part of our daily lives. So it's still very much stigmatized in a lot of communities of color to not even begin to talk about mental health and suicide. But I would just say I'm happy that it's not like that in the United States. Imagine if it was. It's criminalized in a different way. It's criminalized in a way that it's like, you know, I think people say, well, don't try to use mental health as the scapegoat when something happens. But y'all, sometimes like it's like mental health is a part of everything. Like you can't separate mental health. So really you could make an argument to say anytime some kind of tragedy or something happens, mental health had some kind of role in it. Now I don't, to let's also be careful to not stigmatize people who have mental illness and just start saying anybody who commits a violent crime or something like that that it was a result of mental illness, because then you start having people thinking, oh, only people with mental illness commit violent crimes, right? And that's further there are high functioning people with mental illness who don't commit violent crimes and who don't have these kind of behaviors or actions or anything. They're just like living their lives and navigating their lives. So we got to be careful with how we put these different labels on people when it comes to mental illness. But the criminalization piece, I'm glad to be in the United States, and that's something you don't really hear Black men saying.
No, they internationally, they're very much a suck it up community. I pretty much believe that. I don't like what's going on even in Afghanistan. I don't even see them reporting on the mental health of the women there, the change of, order once we left. Like in the news, they very rarely report on the mental health piece of a lot of major news tragedies, traumas. They very rarely touch on that. They touch on everything else, but they don't touch on how this affecting the mental health of its citizens. Like why can't we have a mental health segment in the same language as we talk about the women are being abused, or suppressed, or this and this is going on. This man was stoned to death in the middle of the street, and how come we just can't take 2 seconds to say, but the Islamic mental health center was opened up and it provides X amount of services to its citizens. Like why we can't just take 2 seconds to highlight that part? Because as it stands here in America, I think mental health centers only exist here per se. I mean, I'm not generalizing all international countries, but I'm just saying in a lot of countries, I don't hear them talk about it. But next month is Global World Mental Health Month. So maybe what I'll do is start to research and find actual global mental health centers and see what they are doing in their country to address this mental health issue.
Yeah, and so to that,
it's a call to action for me.
Yeah. I want to say, Mama Brown, there is a model, if you will, that actually came out of the favelas in Brazil, and it is a model that is really based on, and we know this model because this is part of our culture. It's based on your community. Right. So it's like the healing is in the community. That's probably the final thing I want to say is that not everybody has access to a psychiatrist or to get medication or insurance or, maybe some people may not even see this show because they don't even have the right kind of technology. Right. But one of the, I think the beautiful things about being a Black person is we have our people that we confide in, and we have those experiences that are just healing in nature, right? Like I don't even know how to describe it, but there's something that comes up at the cookout that's like it's a healing energy. There's something that happens at the it could be at the church, right? That is a different type of healing energy, or at the friends night out. There's something about that energy that is healing, and they call that, in the mental health world, they call it peer support. They got a name for it, but just think about your natural circle. If you are blessed and lucky enough to have one person, whether it be a friend, a family member, there's somebody in your circle that can be a peer support to you, and that likely has been, and you probably don't even know it. You've been, providing support to this person. They've been supporting you in your time of need. Peer supports are more important now than ever because we're all going through something. So think about who that person or those people are in your life, and try to strengthen those relationships, because chances are, if and when all else fails, you could lean on them for some support. So that would be my call to action.
Absolutely. Well, there it is, guys. Another episode of On Tilt, Black mental health and policing in America. We are so grateful that you guys joined us today for such a very serious topic. Look, we want to leave you with this. Make sure that you are connected to someone that when it gets really hard, you can call. Or if you have a higher being that you pray, meditate. That works wonders. Whatever you do, don't get stuck. Whatever you do, you're more valuable here than not. I love you. If you need to hear me tell you, get in touch with me. The beautiful thing is my love is unconditional. I don't need to know you to love you. I don't need to have this whole magical thing to use the words "I love you." I have that right to love who I want to love, and I've loved people who didn't love me. And it's okay. I love people. I love my enemies. That's scripture.
I was gonna say, you brought us full circle with the scripture.
Yes, I love my enemies. Real talk. I got some enemies out there, and guess what I tell them? I love you.
Thank you for that, Mama Brown. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you. We love you, and we'll see y'all next week.